So maybe within the last 30 minutes from the time I'm recording this, the Supreme Court gave their ruling on the challenge to the CDC's extension of the eviction moratorium. So they took the moratorium that was in place under the Trump administration, which already was loosely enforced, and a bunch of people were being evicted all throughout the pandemic anyway. But after the whole photo op with Cori Bush and the Justice Democrats and the steps of the Capitol, the Biden administration agreed to extend the moratorium for, I think it was 60 days. And but instead of covering everybody who it was originally covering, it only covered 90%. And of course, like I said, there were people still being evicted anyway. So now the Supreme Court, as soon as Biden or the CDC put out that order to extend the moratorium, there were challenges from the real estate industry, lobbyist groups, and groups that represent landlords and financial institutions, challenged the order from the CDC, and it was expected that at some point it would be their challenge would be the courts would agree with their challenge, because previously the CDC ruled that the Biden administration couldn't extend the moratorium anymore through executive order, and that Congress had to actually pass legislation to deal with the housing crisis in this country. And so that ruling was maybe spring or early summer, and that's when the whole countdown to the eviction moratorium expiring was, and Congress still didn't act. The Biden administration didn't push them to act, and so then it expired, and then they put up this flimsy moratorium that the Supreme Court just struck down. And so this is monumental. And this is, I mean, I might have an egg on my face, but this really feels like a tipping point, because millions of families are now, there is absolutely no protections from them being evicted. And like I said, people are still being evicted across the country, but the floodgates are going to open up. And it's impossible to comprehend what's going to happen, because at the moment, there's about 1 million homeless people in the country right now, as it is. But the amount of people who owe months in back rent and are basically unable to pay that back rent no matter how much they work, because of the lockdowns and the pandemic and all those things. The amount of people facing eviction, the amount of households facing eviction is about 5 million households. So, and in the households, of course, it's like a family. So we're talking about some households, maybe 4 people, 5 people. And all of those people are facing eviction right now. So we're talking about multiplying the current homeless population, arguably by 10 times the current homeless population, if not more than that. And the amount of suffering that's about to happen in this country, that's already happening in this country, and it's going to be exacerbated unnecessarily. It's disgusting. I really believe, and I have since the beginning of this pandemic, that when they finally allow these evictions to happen unabated, it's going to create such an economic shock that it could very likely be that trigger that we've all been waiting for like real sustained massive public pressure and direct action for a populist economic agenda. This can really be it, because we're talking about arguably multiplying the homeless population by 10 or 20 million homeless people in this country is what we could be facing if Congress and the Biden administration doesn't act immediately. And so all the people who are going to be evicted, all the people who are currently homeless and benevolent to deal with that during a pandemic, they should all be shaking shit up right now. Everybody should be shaking shit up right now. And anybody who's being evicted, anybody who's being thrown out of their house, they should be setting up camp outside of these politicians' homes, outside of their offices. And the politicians need to be made uncomfortable because they are not doing their job. And worse than not doing their job, let me try to frame this correctly, because a lot of people are going to act like, and a lot of the spin you're going to hear in the media is going to be that, oh, Congress, they just, whoops, they got so busy and they were just bumbling around. And what do you know? They knew that this day was going to happen eventually at some point for 18 months, and they've been kicking the can down the road with absolutely no plan to do anything about it. No real plan to do anything about it. No concrete, substantive plan to actually address the housing crisis. They've known about this entire time. And they've been on vacation. I swear to God, since March of 2020, Congress might have been on vacation for like 6 months. Easy. And that's a low count of the amount of vacation time that they've had. They've been on vacation endlessly. They've when they're in session, they're doing a bunch of bullshit other than legislating on the most pressing issues that are happening right now. And it's not because they're so incompetent. They are corrupt as all hell. This isn't like some scheduling conflict and they got busy and they just couldn't, nail down the date to really end homelessness in this country. And then what do you know? Time got away from me and the eviction moratorium got expired and it's slapped down by the Supreme Court and we have no plan. Oh my God. This is at the behest of their corporate donors. The Democratic Party in 2020 alone, in the election cycle, most recent election cycle, I can't speak. The Democratic Party took $89 million from the real estate industry, and this isn't even including the banks and the financial institutions who also have a stake in a mass homelessness crisis and will also stand to benefit. These are just the numbers from the real estate industry directly, the landlords and the owners of the properties. They donated $89 million to the Democratic Party in the 2020 election cycle alone. They donated $31 million to the Biden campaign. And these are numbers from Open Secret, so you can go take a look for yourself. $31 million to the Biden campaign in 2020. This is how much money they're spending to influence politicians in just one election cycle. And by the way, in the year 2020, the real estate industry, they spent $131 million lobbying politicians in 2021 alone. They're spending ungodly amounts of money to influence these politicians. And it's for exactly scenarios like this. Anytime when the government is supposed to choose between their role as protecting the public and serving the public and being a check on corporate power for the public, anytime there's a decision to be made between doing that or letting the real estate industry and all the other corporate donors run out the back door with all the money, the reason why they spend all this money trying to influence politicians is for scenarios just like that. So when it comes to decisions like that, they will always break the way that their corporate donors want them to. And that it's turned into, it's manifest as a government that is literally hostile to the public at this point. They are willing to allow the worst homelessness crisis in the history of this country to happen unabated. It's not like they can't do anything to stop it. They can do it. They can stop it tomorrow. They can stop it today if they wanted to. They can end homelessness today if they wanted to. They can cancel all the rent mortgages today if they wanted to. And they won't do it because they're so fucking corrupt and beholden to the corporate donors who are going to make billions of dollars when they throw families out of their homes and then get to resell their whole houses, just like they did after they crashed the stock market in 2008. So this is the whole point of that rant was, so that you get across how intentional this all is. They are on purpose. People like to talk about, oh, poverty is a policy choice. Well, this is the choice. They're making that choice right now, right in front of us. They're choosing to allow the worst homelessness crisis in the history of this country to happen at the behest of the corporate donors. And one more thing I want to say on this, there's a lot to be said on this, but in this video. So all the people who were telling me I need to throw a fucking parade for AOC and Cori Bush for their grandstanding outside the Capitol a couple weeks ago, what do you have to say now? Because there were people at the time who, independent journalists who I respect very much for showing up at that rally or whatever the fuck that was, the sleepover on the steps of the Capitol, the photo op. There were independent journalists like Franco from Frank Analysis, who I've been on his show several times. Colin, I believe, was there too. And Max Blumenthal were there asking, so what are you going to do about, like, first of all, the outstanding rent and mortgage? Because it's not just, it didn't disappear. And what are you going to do about all the people who are still being evicted? And when they were rightfully bringing up critiques like that, and people like myself were rightfully bringing up critiques like that, everybody was telling us, oh, stop being negative Nancy's. You can't take yes for an answer. You wanted them to come out and do direct action and pressure for to push our policy agenda, and they did it. So why are you still complaining? But this is the reason why we were critical, and this is the reason why we weren't just clapping like trained seals at the first sight of a photo op and paying lip service to such an incredibly important issue. Because we knew there was nothing substantive there. When they stepped on the steps of the Capitol, and then when Biden did that bullshit moratorium, and they all pretended like it was a giant victory, and all right, everybody, let's lock up shop and let's blast some music. And then they went on vacation with no plan, nothing to do about the people who were still going to be evicted during that shitty moratorium while it lasted, and all the people who were going to inevitably be evicted when the moratorium was finally expired. They didn't give a fuck, and they didn't have a plan for it, and that's why we were calling bullshit at the time. And now, as of this recording, I haven't seen anything from any of the Justice Democrats, any of the Fraud Squad, any of the Bernie Sanders himself. None of them have any type of planned, coordinated counter to against this insanity of throwing tens of millions of people out into the streets in the middle of a fucking pandemic. None of them have an actual plan, and these people like to call themselves socialists and democratic socialists and social democrats. None of them have an actual socialist agenda to counter this capitalism gone amok, because that's exactly what this housing crisis is. It is greed and profit run amok. None of them have an actual counter to that to end homelessness in this country. And like I said, it sounds crazy, it sounds up in the sky, but it is very possible for the government to end homelessness. There are more vacant houses, multiple times more vacant houses, empty houses in this country than there are homeless people. So if the government were to just put them in houses that already exist, that are already there, they could end homelessness. Pay whatever it takes to move them into those houses. The government literally prints money. So they can end the homelessness crisis right now. They can end this eviction crisis right now. But nobody in government is agitating for it. And that includes all the so-called progressives, but a really bunch of fucking neoliberals who are going around raising much money from grassroots people, working class people. None of them are actually trying to counter this with the real solution, which is to end homelessness. And it goes to show you what a crock of shit that photo op at the steps of the Capitol was. And you guys already knew it was at the time too, just like I did. But this is all the people. This is just to say all the people who out there defending that bullshit, that garbage, and then defending the extension of that bullshit moratorium as if that was something to celebrate. All of them have a fucking egg on their face, and you look kind of dumb because the problem was still there. And even with that thing in place, nobody was doing a goddamn thing to actually solve it, including all the people who were out there grandstanding and pretending like they were actually fighting to prevent homelessness in this country. And then they went off and tried to fundraise off that bullshit photo op. That's where their priorities lie. They are fighting for you. And like I said at the beginning of this video, the only way anybody do anything about this is if people get in the streets and business as usual can't continue. Because this is fucking madness. Like I said, the current homeless population is about 1 million homeless people in this country. And we're talking about multiplying the current homeless population by multiple times. This is insanity.